it's interesting that when you talk about this this almost mentality these days. It's almost if the narrative of selling a free lunch is an information war or a mental warfare, right? And I think if we look at the centers of information in the past, and Andrew Carnegie, he said that he built libraries in the States to give people ladders if they wanted to climb and understand the world, and acquire information to make it a better place. So you are quite a philosophical thinker yourself, and you talked about individuals. Who are some of the philosophers or thinkers of the past that have shaped your views of the world?
I'm too embarrassed to answer that question. I have dabbled very little in philosophy. I haven't read much. I like reading history.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you a lot about that. My geography is really on point. I would mostly know where in the world we are and which city of 200 countries. Science, I enjoy. It is a god. Science has become a god. It's a controversial thing to say, but science is not so serious. The thing about science is it cons people by saying this is the only law, and then you have to. It's like, this is how science is. Sorry, I'm digressing, but basically, I don't know much about philosophy. But let's philosophize about science. Look, I love science. It's something I understand to a degree, for as much as a layman can, but being retired, I have a lot of time, so I read up on a lot of things, and it's the self-teaching progress. The autodidact in me has never died. It's just, there are three things I need to be happy. Yeah. The company of my loved ones, being active in nature, and the acquisition of knowledge. I just really like that. Now, the thing about science is, I was standing in school in 1988, and I was standing at the locker, and then I heard behind me, "Hey, Chris!" And I looked around, bah, face bust day, like a fist pie, bah, full on. I was like, gee. Yes, and then the shots just came, and I kind of defended myself, and then before anything could happen, the prefects came and they broke it up. So there was this guy, and I was like, what is wrong with you? And he was like, no, you said something about the cadet band. Now, Linden School had the nation's best cadet band. And apparently I had at some point made some disparaging remark about the cadet. I don't know about that. Now that I'm older, I can figure out the kid wanted to get some points. He was like, let me pick a victim that I think I can do in and go do it in defending us. And that way, defending, the cadet band of which I'm a part. And that way I can get a bit of clout, a bit of street cred, I guess, And then he was like, okay, I'll see you after school in the bathrooms. I was like, okay, cool. So after school in the matric bathrooms, there we go. And it was a confined space. So again, he came for me, but I'm a grappler. I'm not a very fast guy. I can take a punch. I can give a punch. I'm not the best, not by a long shot actually, but I'm a grappler.
Okay.
And it's like
is the bathroom suited for
the bathroom grappler? Is suited for grappling. So I got in, and eventually I had this guy in sort of a grip, and I was banging his head on those wooden slats that you sit on when you get dressed, and I was doing well. Again, the prefects came up and they broke it up, and it's like, no, see you Saturday on the roof of the parking at Cresta Center Shopping Mall. I was like, so there we go again, all right. And I have a few days to prepare, but I saw this guy likes giving a shot, so I went to speak to Arnold van Heerden, and he gave me a few, because he was the best fighter, and he was a Kulok. He was the best fighter in the standard, so he showed me a few moves, like, okay, so I'm going to punch this guy. And we go onto the roof, and this guy brings his cronies, I bring one or two of my cronies. I wasn't a very popular guy. And
was that for backup, or?
You must always go out with friends. You're not going to go to a
fight. Yeah,
you're not
fight needs a crowd.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, and we're on the roof, and so we start. It's like, and then this guy starts dancing. And I just remember the orange lights of as he was dancing around me, the orange lights just going boom, and these shots coming from absolutely nowhere, and like, bam, pulverizing my face. And I couldn't get anything in. He was just too good. He was too fast. I couldn't touch him, and I couldn't even see his shots. He just completely mauled me. It was terrible. And I had a shiner that I couldn't see through this eye. Eventually I cut right through my lip. He punched me so hard that my tooth broke through my lip. I was bleeding all over. I was in a really bad shape. I didn't want to give up. I was like, screw that, I was like, yeah, fight. And then at some point, epiphany.
Mm-hmm.
I saw this guy loves the left hook.
Uh-huh.
It always comes around and it eats this eye. That's what he loves that shot. And I was like, okay, take a few.
Yeah.
Take a few.
Okay.
So I was like, Dwah! I was like, yeah. Dwah! I was like, yeah, he's getting to them. Dwah! It comes in. When the next one came, then I got away and I actually evaded the shot because it was the rhythm. I could sort of predict it.
Yeah.
And I came back with a luck shot. Just like backhand. Wabba! And I hit him here and I lifted him like a sack of potatoes. Bam! He fell. And he was on all fours. And it was like fantastic. And I stepped back and I came because I wanted to kick him in the face because he was now on all fours and he was like, and I stepped back and I came to kick him and I was like, this is going to be like Nasbuerta from the half line, just like drop, kicking it right. And I stopped just before that because no, I can't kick the hook,
Wow.
I can't kick the hook. So I waited for him to stand up and then he got up and he proceeded to beat me so badly that his own cronies pulled him off me and said, no, this is enough. This is enough. So fortunately I didn't have to surrender. Wow. But I was a mess. I didn't look good for quite a while. I still don't, But I learned 2 very important lessons that day. No. Yeah, 2 very important lessons. The first one is, don't box a boxer.
Okay.
Don't let your opponent write the rules of engagement.
Yes.
And the second thing I learned was, there is no such thing as a clean fight. Fighting is dirty. So if you have the opportunity to kick someone in the face, do it. Absolutely. Do it. Because you're in a fight.
You would think these are quite self-explanatory in life until you actually go through it.
Until you actually have to learn them the hard way. I wish I had someone to tell that to me. But now this is where we get to science. There's purpose.
I know there's always there's a path back to.
The thing about science is the reason why it's so difficult arguing with people who come from the scientific paradigm is they've already written the rules. For example, the burden of proof. Now, you go with the whole thing of, let's say you're a religious guy and you want to protect the religious view and the whole concept of God, and you're arguing with a scientist. Then you'll say to the scientist, you prove to me that God doesn't exist. Hey?
Yeah.
And then the scientist just says to me, no, that's not how it works. That's not how logic works. The burden of proof is on you. And that's the mistake people make. It's like, okay, that's not the rules of logic. I'm going to stick with that. No, screw that. I'm not using your rules to argue with me. And if you're saying I have to use those rules and I say I refuse to use those rules, I'm going to make up my own rules, and then you're like, I'm out of the argument, then you're, okay, you lost. It's fine. You can throw in the towel. You can go. It's fine. This is a very simplified version, but I wish you could see me in action. Because the trick is not to push them away, because yes, an argument is nice. I like an argument as much as a good boxer likes a boxing fight. The trick is to still seduce the opponent into a willingness to have the conversation. But and I know it's a controversial take, but in arguing with people who come with a scientific angle, you should be careful not to have them prescribe the rules, because there's no way you're going to win. And it's the arrogance of science. It's very much become a religion. It's exactly like a religion. You don't like that?
No, I do like that.
Good.
You mentioned quite a few, I think we've dropped a few authors' names throughout this discussion.
I just mentioned Robert Ardrey, but I'd like to throw in Dostoevsky and Tolstoy in there as well, if I may.
That's very good. Okay. I will gladly accept those. But you once wrote a guest article actually for us Troy, you said, I can wax lyrical about the end game of the system. I can provide scenarios. I can show examples. But this is an article, not a book.
Mm.
Now, my question to you is, are we going to see a book from you in the future? You told us earlier now you're semi-retired.
Mm.
Are we going to see anything like that? Do you want to write a book?
Yes, I'm busy.
Okay.
I am busy, and I think a good start is your own story, because given the fact that all I have is a 1989 matric, we live in a world, again, the rules are written by those who want to control the discourse. And if you're going to write about politics and you don't have a degree in political science, then they're like, no, but who are you to speak
touch
of?
of science, yes.
Yeah. Interesting thing is I'm not even qualified to write on music, because I built a career on 3 chords and I never had a single lesson in music. I still don't understand anything about musical theory, and I'm actually very limited in my musical abilities. But fortunately, the music consuming public have a standard low enough to even accommodate my modest talents. But I think one thing I am an expert at is myself. And I do have an interesting story. It's a story that spans 50 years in 33 countries and 3,000 shows, and enough brushes with death, and enough sex, and more than enough drugs, and certainly an abundance of rock and roll to make for good reading. Then, excuse me, then the challenge really is to put it together in a narrative that is pleasant, that is digestible, and the proof of the pudding is the reading of it in that case. So I am writing a biography, and if the style of writing and if the contents works, then we'll go on to the next.
That's exciting.
And if it doesn't work, guess what? We'll still go on to the next, because I like writing.
Yes, absolutely. But when can we expect that? That's an exciting development.
I thought it was going to happen last year, but I've had a few interruptions. I always maintained that I will never marry and I will never have children, and then in a very short space of a few months, after sticking with that, when I was 5 years old,
you held out.
I was 5 years old. I was going through my cowboy phase. I was always walking around with my cowboy hat and my sheriff badge and my holster and my cap gun. And it was between Christmas and New Year in the Cape with a family, and I walked out onto the stoep and I pulled 3 shots, bang, 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 and all the adults looked at me, and I said, I just want to say that, I said it in Afrikaans, I'm never going to have children and I'm never going to marry. And I don't know why I said that, and it was to be true for the next 43 years. And then when I was 48, it changed. Just, I married, and I had a child and retired. And just decided that that's my new mission. But when you suddenly get a wife and a baby and you move to a different lifestyle, so here I am, I'm striving for complete self-sufficiency. I've been building for 2 years. You saw what it looked like when you came here. It's just like rubber lying all over, and it's a mess. And I've been building non-stop for 2 years, and you don't get around to anything else, because I might not lay the bricks, but I'm very much, I want to see things being done. And I'm very protective over my territory, you know. When guests or workers or anyone comes, I should probably try to relax more, but I can't. I'm sorry, I guess I'm territorial in that way. And so I haven't had much time to apply myself to these things. But as I told you when you came, I apologized for the mess and said, but look, finally it's finished. Literally a week ago we finished. There's one little bit of painting that still needs to be done, and then our home and our workspace and our living space is finally ready. So I think the next month starts an exciting new chapter for me.
That's very interesting. It's exciting, but I think if for
did I just overshare? I might have.
No, I think it's brilliant for the listeners. I mean, I didn't know what to expect. You mentioned to me that it was a remote place, and I think you're almost at the edge of the escarpment, right? In the northern Free State. It's more northern,
yeah,
right?
Northeastern.
North,
yeah, you said
northeastern.
eastern, I said northern.
Yeah,
I think it's
northeastern.
northeastern.
But when I arrived, I could see that you might have been busy with construction, but it was almost as if it might sound cliche, but it was almost as if there was a well sewn together song. Or your house here is almost an embodiment of sort of a well sewn together song. Everything has very much an authentic, artistic raison d'être almost.
Nice.
And yeah, so it's been like it's almost felt like a tour and through a museum for me. So I have no doubt that you should definitely put some of these, or I would suggest you definitely put a lot of these photos of this place in that book.
Way too proud. That's why we.
That's true.
That's why we pulled these chairs over to this corner and like in
very
the area, let's have a little conversation. No,
but there should also be a little bit of magic.
There has to be magic, and also this is an inner sanctum. I had friends come here once, and I told them never to come again, which is a terrible thing to say to friends.
Okay.
And the very basic reason for that is this is my house, this is my home, this is my child's school, this is my museum, this is my temple, and this is my business. And there are rules and protocols in place for schools, museums, gyms, workplaces, homes, houses, and temples. And if you don't go by those rules, if you don't respect it in that way, then you have to leave the building, please.
Absolutely.
So it's it doesn't mean I'm like this. I hope you haven't experienced it as such. It's like you do relax, but
great hosts.
But you got to, and with all those things, I think it's too private a family affair.
True.
But I'm happy that people like you would go out and say, well, it's really fabulous.
No, I'm gonna keep it a mystery as well. Yeah. It's a jewel. I think. I think your you mentioned briefly your lifestyle here. It's very much. Do you want to just touch upon it in terms of what you what you're trying to achieve?
Self-sufficiency is always. Old Max de Pre, the journalist. We actually have some personal links that go back many years, and some of them might have suffered somewhat at the ravages of time and change, but he had a farm near Roosendaal, and I went there a few times, and it was just such an exquisite place, such a beautiful place. And in it he had a book, John Seymour's Complete Guide to Self-Sufficiency. And I opened up that book and I fell madly in love with it. And I thought, like, this is definitely the way to be. Now, if you ever go have a look at that book, it's insane. I mean, that guy he's really very, very deep.
It's a really complete guide.
Absolutely complete. How to slaughter a pig graphically. This is how you do it. And the chicken, and how to make a pie, and how to make jam, and how to keep bees, and which crops to plant. It's such a deep thing, and that has always really appealed to me, because that is freedom.
Yes,
that is freedom. It's still not going to be freedom, because you have to get up and you have to work, otherwise you're not going to do it. But freedom is just an idea, so that's what I'm going for. I like the idea of self-sufficiency. I like the idea of living in a way that is as free as possible from interference. I like being my own little government. And which brings me to the issue of tax. It's 1769 in the United States of America, and you are a black man working on a cotton plantation. I am the master. I happen to be white. There were some black slave owners as well, but I was one of the white ones. And your daddy was brought across via Liberia in Western Africa and brought here as a slave. You were born in slavery,
Yes.
and now you work for
An
me.
asset of the master,
Yes.
of the title holder.
Yes, and
Mm.
you toil under the sun and you pick cotton and everything. And one day I'm in a good mood and I come to you and I say, boy, you're my slave 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
But you're a nice guy. Well, no, you're not a nice guy, but you're a good asset.
Yeah.
And I give you your freedom for 1 hour every day between midnight and 1 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
You are yourself. But you can't leave the plantation. But you are not a slave.
Mm-hmm.
I'm asking you, are you still a slave or not?
Well,
You get between 12 and 1.
Yeah, I guess.
You're not allowed to leave the plantation without my permission,
Yeah.
but you're not a slave.
I guess it goes back to the point you made previously around freedom being not something that you can allocate like capital or factors of production. So the mere fact that another human is allocating freedom in a set perimeter and a set time frame would make it null and void effectively. So I would not feel, I think I would almost revert to a theoretical viewpoint and say that it can't be freedom if it's given. Freedom has to be natural, or a natural law.
Interesting.
Right? Bestowed not from any living creature, bestowed on you not from any living creature on earth. I think it is God given. I think it is it should be given, or it should be a gift merely because of our birth or our existence on this planet.
I like the way you dance, and and I like the way you approach it. Not from "Are you still a slave?" You're saying it's not freedom, but I still want to get back to the slavery. I want to push you on that point.
Okay.
You're a slave 24 hours a day,
Yes.
and then one day the master gives you 1 hour
Yes.
to yourself, and the other 23 hours belong to him. Are you still a slave or not?
I would think that because of the constraints, I am still a slave. The fact that I'm not producing, in those.
It was the answer I was hoping for.
Yeah.
Because you have to sleep, and I've given it to you. I've given it to you at the time when you ought to be asleep, but you can wake up and.
Right.
But let's extend it.
Okay.
I say to you, you're my slave. You wake up. You work for me. You wake up at 6.
Yes.
And you toil in the fields. But I'm going to give you 4 hours a day in the evening for yourself. Are you a slave or not?
So I think there are 2 points for me. Obviously, those hours are usually the hours where, as an asset, as a slave asset, I wouldn't be producing in any case. So I'm eating into my recuperation or rest time necessarily as a slave. So I would still be a slave. But I would almost put it in the category of what I would term slave relativism. I think it would just be a different. It would just be slavery relative to another form of slavery. Different. I would assume that there are different timetables for different slaves in this scenario.
New scenario.
Okay.
You're going to work for me 10 hours a day. The first 5 hours are going to be for me. You have no choice. You will. And if you refuse, I will incarcerate you.
Yes.
Are you a slave or not?
And I think I know where this is going, which is fantastic.
Right.
Because, yes, you are still a slave because of the element of choice.
Coercion.
Coercive non-choice.
Yeah.
Right. I think there are, but, and I think I'll let you draw the conclusions or tie it back. But
you've seen where I'm headed, right?
The mere fact that, well, I think there's an element of morality that we can discuss as to who's at fault? The person that coerces, the master that coerces this upon other people, or the people that are under the yoke of this, but that merely accept it. I would almost tweak, if we compare it to taxation, I would almost tweak it. I would
cover blown
as an example. I would almost say that the slave. I would almost take the scenario and say that the slave or the slavery, the plantation does not have walls or a fence. There are no whips. There are no guns, and then ask that question again.
Well, it's not really true.
Huh?
I mean, the whips and the guns, be they figurative or physical. But indeed, you know what I'm onto. If you're a top earner and you're in the 50% or the 45% tax bracket, it means every single moment that you work from January till May or June is forcibly for the state. You have absolutely no choice.
Yes. Well, the mere fact that you just don't, the master does not have a face necessarily. It's just an entity. But you are most certainly working for under coercive circumstances.
But you know what? Many of the slaves never saw the master.
Wow. Okay.
The master's too busy in there having drinks with Leonardo DiCaprio and Django to come out and check how you're picking your cotton. You know, we have foremen doing that for us. So it's always a system anyway. It's always a system. In fact, I think I would put it to you that it would have been a lot harder if we had direct access to the master. We don't. And that's why it's harder to hold them accountable, because we can't see them. But the point is, there is your time and your life, and it goes really far. For me, it's even the matter of when I sit and I fill out my tax forms, and it takes me 2 hours to do. My blood boils, because I'm like, I'm being forced. It's the same as putting a gun to my head, because if I don't do this, I could go to prison.
Yes.
So there's this master, this faceless master, this very powerful master, who forces me to right now sit and fill in these forms and do the little, be a mouse of the scrolls, as it were, so and write all the little details, and then file and return and do. And if I pay the auditor to do that for me, I have to work for that audit, and that audit doesn't come cheap. So I have hours and hours that I worked, and all that labor goes to the auditor, because the master wants his cut, he wants his stuff, and it really infuriates me. It's very hectic.
But funny enough, it ties back to the you mentioned earlier about sort of the ideals of Soviet Union, communism, socialism, the selling of the free lunch, and how it almost leads invariably to a position of slavery. The idea of income tax was sold to the public initially as a taxation on the few wealthy segment of the population. It was never intended for the entire population, but you almost encroach into those freedoms by way of, there's that saying about the totalitarian tiptoe. It was going to the masses from a political perspective and saying, the aristocracy that has, right, let's take a bit of that wealth and let's share it amongst ourselves. This is income taxation, vote for it. And slowly but surely that sort of pervasively moved towards the entire populace. And that question around the modern day slavery is, can we say that taxation is almost modern day slavery?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely, because it displays all the hallmarks of slavery. This is what I've been getting at. Is it's life is incredibly precious and at the same time completely overvalued. Depends what you're talking about. And we can have a whole nother philosophical discussion about that. I think we did last night when we watched the sunset. We briefly touched on that. But what it really boils down to is, let's go with the South African average. You know, men are expected to become 60 years old. I think the average life expectancy for South African males is 60 years. It might be 62, but I'm going to go with 60.
It's in the 60s, yeah.
Yeah. Now, of those 60 years, a few years, I think now the law doesn't go too far. It goes maybe up to standard 6, you know, to grade 8, maybe grade 10. You have no choice. You have to go to school. Yes. So already that's your life's time, of which the agency over your own life, is prescribed and controlled.
And it is coerced.
Yes, it's absolutely coerced, and they put in there what they want to put in there.
Yes.
And then, you know, then I had to go to the army.
Yeah.
I had no choice. I really didn't want. It was a complete waste of time, and I AWOL'd after 5 weeks.
Wow.
But it's a serious thing to AWOL in 1990 out of the army. And then you start working, and let's say you work from age 20 till 60, and then you die.
Yeah.
Because that's your average life expectancy. Okay, a lot of people get to be
Well,
80
the
years old, but those
to be flat.
Yeah, but those people who are 80 years old also got old because they had so much money for medical attention that their corpses that had already been, from which the souls had already been departed, managed to hang on another 20 years. I know, being very cynical. My mother's 84 and she's in very good health and spirits. But but then 40 years of your life during which you paid tax, let's just say 30%, 20% tax. Let's say you fell in that 20% tax bracket.
It's very benign.
Yeah. It still is, what is 20% to 40 years? It's 8 years.
Yeah. 8 years.
It's like 8 complete years of total incarceration for all intents and purposes. It's total incarceration without food, because the food you buy you have to do outside of that paradigm.
Yes.
And life is so short, and life is so precious, and now there is this force that takes that life from you. And so I guess I'm a bit radical in my expectations for freedom, but you know what, you have to have an extreme.
You have to, well, I think that was the norm. I think if we look at the history of humans and we look at the birth of the state, and if this was 24 hours, the state pitches up at like quarter to midnight, right? 11:45, and then income tax is like 5 minutes to midnight. So I almost think the natural state of human history was void of income tax, void of state. And like you said, I mean, we have a little blip. Life is short, and so we're only seeing one little portion of the peak or the trough of the cycle. But there is one. I mean, this is a Troy Gold podcast, so there is one thing that peasants used to do, or slaves used to do, when under the yoke of empire, and that was they always used to buy a little bit of a shiny metal rock. Well, it's a metal, it's not a rock, but and they used it as a money for 6,000 years. So gold, the element that we know of, and that humans have used in all civilizations almost organically, as the money technology. What do you make of gold?
Some people make jewelry from gold now.
Good angle.
Gold is experiencing its most tumultuous time right now. I think right now is the most dangerous time for gold. And the reason I think that is, it has provably been a fantastic store of wealth. It's hardly ever been a good investment. There are different arguments, there are different school of thought, and it depends what you use to measure the value of that investment. But certainly as far as stockbrokers are concerned, it's not a good investment. But that it's a good holder and a secure holder of wealth, that is certain. I don't want to get involved in the investment thing because I can argue it both ways, so I'm not going to go there. But it has always been a very good way to store and protect wealth. And now what has happened is the arrival of crypto and the extremely interesting times that we live in have changed that ball game. And there are very good arguments made, and I've listened to them. I've been spending a lot of time listening to arguments specifically focused on gold versus crypto. And what I find interesting is, just as an aside, is that the proponents of gold are frequently not very articulate.
Yes.
And the proponents of cryptocurrency, let's say Bitcoin, are usually very articulate and very confident. They're very strong. But it actually makes sense.
Laser eyes as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it hasn't been held by, if you take the Max Kaisers of this world, who's a guy who's very strong on crypto, and the Peter Schiffs of this world is very strong on gold, they have allowed themselves to fall into a very undignified style of discourse. And there are many pejoratives flung about, and they don't always watch their language and their character, and they're losing ever more dignity, which is a shame. So it's become an ugly fight, which it really doesn't have to be.
Yeah, well, I guess it's on the same side of anti-fiat, anti-fractional reserve banking system.
They have a lot in common. They have a lot in common, but now the
macro views.
Now the allies are starting to fight because now we've won the Second World War, and now how are we going to divide Germany?
Yes,
and it's like, and is Max Stalin, or is Peter, for example. But anyway, I think there are good arguments made either way. I just am a bit worried about the eloquence of the gold guys, because I think they miss a lot in terms of gold. And then very often the gold argument is yes, but there's always going to be a value. There's always going to be jewelry. People are always going to want jewelry and stuff, and that is a weak argument. It's not like jewelry, and its use in gold is value. You know that in my 1983 Guinness Book of Records, I read, because that was the one Guinness Book of, I know all the records from 1983, because that is the one Guinness Book of Records. It's my first one I got for Christmas, and I read the whole thing, and it was just like, it answered all the questions I ever wanted to know. So I still know what the land speed record was back then, stuff like that. But the point is, you can take 1 gram of gold and stretch it to 2.4 kilometers. It's the most pliable metal in the universe. And all those properties are really wonderful, and referring to golds that it cannot rust and all those wonderful, that's really nice. But we all know that science, wonderful, great, wonderful, awesome science, tomorrow might figure out an alloy made of other things that beats gold at that.
Well...
It just beats gold. It's like, okay, so now what's your gold now? Because we've made this new wonderful thing. I mean, if you told someone graphite would exist, if you could go back in time with graphite, you would be so incredible. And for example, when you came in here, you saw all the rubble that I started loading onto my bakkie now that we're done building. Now, much of it was corrugated sheets just cut off because I replaced the roof. So you have this triangular just piece of corrugated iron. It's like, it's like, it goes on the bakkie and it's going to be thrown away. And I don't know if anyone has any use for that. I think there always is someone somewhere who does, but it's like this odd shape, and there's a lot of that, and it just goes away. But if I could go back 500 years, 1,500 years, 3,000 years with that thing, I'd be a god. People would be like, oh, look at this incredible, it's shiny, it goes, and it's so hard, and it can cut, and it's like, oh, this is incredible. It'd be the most incredible thing, but science has made it like a cheap thing that now I need to throw away. Okay, so let's not forget that. about gold.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not good for gold. I mean, there you sit there,
Mm.
Troy Gold, but you know that I'm well invested in
Mm.
your company. So there are reasons for that. So
Well, why are you a gold owner?
exactly. So the first thing is, I'm not a gambler,
Mm-hmm.
but if I have to gamble,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go with something that has had value. You said 6,000 years. I would even go with 10, but let's go with 6,000 years. Something that has had value and has been precious for 6,000 years.
Yes.
Suddenly, my 60 years life expectancy in South Africa pops along on the radar.
Yes.
100.
Makes a guest appearance.
It makes a guest appearance, and it just happens that at exactly that moment I'm alive. Pooh! 6,000 years of history, of value is just suddenly null and void.
Yes.
I wouldn't bet on that.
Yes.
I would bet on that value lasting, at least in my lifetime. So that's the one thing.
Okay.
Another thing is there are ways to hold gold and do it tax-free, and sell it for more money and do it tax-free.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to explain that, but I'm going to tell you there are ways, and it's completely legal, and you have to figure out what those are. So I like that, because having just listened to me rant about my own freedom, it's good for me to be consistent with arranging my life in such a way that is in accordance with that freedom.
But this is physical gold outside of the financial
This is
system,
physical gold,
right?
but you're doing physical gold.
Yes, I think that's sort of what we are advocates of as well, is that element of privacy. I mean, gold was effectively the original Bitcoin, right? The fact that it's got a competitor now is a lovely debate to have, but the enemy is most certainly, the government issued monopoly money tickets that we're utilizing.
But also paper gold. The enemy is
paper
also
gold,
in.
right?
It's the cancer within.
Right. So there's a little bit of a snake oil that comes along around the elements of paper gold. There's counterparty risk. There's a bank, part of the system, that would say, I'm holding gold for you, and I won't give you ownership of gold, but I will give you an IOU that whatever happens to the gold price, I promise to pay.
I'll cook the books.
So
There's your piece of paper, and then we'll have another 2008, and everybody goes, "But I got the paper." It's like, yes, your paper is worth paper.
Yeah. So I think the gold Bitcoin debate aside, and we're actually going to pull you into one of these days. The virtue and the value of physical gold as almost a outside of the financial system, held safely, but for its purposes of hedging, safety, security, the anti-inflation money, because gold's actually been a money. You talked about the investment side, where it's not supposed to be an investment in the true sense of it. It's not supposed to be risky. It doesn't have risk. That's why it doesn't pay an interest. $100 bill doesn't have an interest because it is money or currency. The same thing with gold, and the same thing with Bitcoin. You don't get interest on a Bitcoin just by owning the money or the currency. So gold is a money, and that's definitely the school of thought that what we're trying to do is to allow it to function in the digital age alongside your other currencies, whether it be private monies or state monies. So we're if you're in the if you're into gold, if you're a gold owner, which has historically been a very small segment of the population, of the earning class, and it's always been, and I think the estimate is less than 1% of investable assets in the world is in gold, then you want it in physical gold, and you want it outside the system, and you want it secure. So I think you obviously made the right choice, not away from the paper gold side of things into the physical.
No, I don't believe in paper gold, but I was still busy.
So I digressed.
So that was number 2.
That was number 2, yeah.
Number 3 is, although I just said that science can always give you something, for as long as they haven't, that one still stands. There's still some functionality around gold that science cannot bypass. So
I don't want to interrupt you, but there are some elements, funny, like Einsteinium and all these other elements that are scarcer than gold on the periodic table.
many of them.
But they're they're too their life cycle is too short. It's and it's not as pervasive, found anywhere in the world. That's why we had all these societies finding gold. So it was almost the right balance between scarcity and the metal side of it. Anyway, I'm filling in.
Well,
go.
So that was number 3. Was still the use of it. I have 2 more to go.
Yes.
But I just want to quickly take a little aside because it's relevant to this thing.
Okay.
Here we are in my house in the mountains, and I built it at a time when I had more money than intelligence. I don't have much intelligence, so that doesn't say that I had that much money, but still that imbalance is not favorable. And I built, in some ways, I built the way I shouldn't have, and I've spent the last 2 years rectifying much of that, fixing it. And it's because there was one little thing that I wasn't aware of that is extremely important. And for those of you who want to build, when you build, look at how people have been building in that area for ages. Look at how all the houses look. And I understand your need for individualism, but take it from me, they know what it is because they paid dearly for that knowledge. Yes. You'll see all the houses in this area. We're high in the mountains and it's extremely cold. I mean, we can hit -10 in the winter here, and we get snow here. And the wind makes the Cape doctor look like a kitten sneeze. The wind here blows you into fear. It's the most incredible thing, and it's like, there goes my roof, you know. So the pitching of the roof has to be right. There's a certain angle at which the roof needs to be built here, and if you digress from that, you're exposing yourself to the dangers, which I didn't do because I built my house, like I told you, from recycled. It's a brand new 100-year-old house.
Yeah.
It was determined by the duck-upper, what is that in English, the rafters or whatever that I could find,
rafters,
you know. And awnings, isn't it awnings or whatever? I don't know. English architecture is not really my field of expertise.
We'll go check.
And then and another thing is, you have low ceilings because you need to keep the heat in because it's cold up here. Even in summer it gets pretty cool. You have to do that, and then you have to insulate. And there are all these little rules, and many of them I didn't stick with. And also where I am built on the mountain, there's a reason the farmhouse is down there in the trees, because the trees protect it from the wind. It provides fuel for them to burn, and that is the right temperature here, because you'll see traditional, when you go through the Transkei and the Ciskei, what used to be the Ciskei, you'll see that most of those huts, they build on a certain elevation. That's the sweet spot, man. You go down there are too many bugs and mosquitoes out there in the flay, and it gets really cold because it dips down there. You go too high, it gets really cold because it's too high, and the wind thrashes you. They know what they're doing. So, having said all of that, now we're going to get back to gold. You cannot ignore the value and the system that's been behind gold for so long. There is a reason for that, and you need to stay aware of that. And when you come with something new like paper gold, be careful. It sounds like a great idea, but it might not be a great idea, and your house might fall. The wind might blow you away. The traditionalist way, with foundations, cultural foundation, personal foundation, value foundation, money foundation, you can be like a great new young maverick. But even Elon Musk sticks to a lot of the traditional principles, like his work ethic. It's a very traditional thing. That guy works himself to pieces. And his systems, traditionally you go with a system. You don't just like grab an HDH bottle of chlorine and add some water to it and go stand there and put a person in it and hope they make it to the moon. You have to go through a lot of systems, you know. So the guy's a maverick, but
also a self-taught rocket scientist, as you're a self-taught musician.
Okay, I'm going to write that book. And so, okay, so that was just a sideline, just to put a lot of value in the way things have always been done, and that there is a reason that they've been done that way, and there's a lot of value in that. But the two more things I wanted to get that I like about gold is the last one is a bit of a weird one. But the second to last, wait, what did I cover? It's always been a good store of value. Oh yes, it's a good moral decision.
Mm-hmm.
If you value freedom,
Mm-hmm.
if you see yourself as a free, private individual,
Mm-hmm.
and you want to prevent infringements on that freedom,
Yeah.
gold is a very good moral choice. And the interesting thing about going with a moral, because you're like, man, we're talking money, it's not about morals, you know, it's like it's wheeling and dealing, and you know, it's dog eats dog, and if you're stupid, you're going to lose. I put it to you that in life, if you act in accordance with your principles, and you make good moral judgments and decisions, the net gains will far outweigh the net losses.
Yeah.
Being a principled human being, sticking with that core of humanity and your system of belief is very good. And I know it sounds whack, but I'm about to get even more whack. So let's just warm up to this. But if you invest and do your business in a moral way, in a good fundamental, and in a good way, you want to hurt nobody. In fact, you want to do good to other people, and you want to protect your family, not at the expense of other people, then gold is good. And there are many things you don't understand. And again, I'm going to quickly digress before I get to the last one. We live in the information age. Google is everything I wanted as a child, because I was always asking questions, and the library was just too far, and that was the way you got knowledge, and it was a lot
analog versus digital.
Yeah, you know, and it was very important. But we live now in the information age. You have any question, there's the answer. But then you see there's another answer, and it contradicts this answer. So the information age we thought would bring answers, but they've actually just brought more questions, because now there's a lot of polarization, there's a lot of division, and some people say this is the truth, and some people say this is the truth. You can only get the truth if you want to know, okay, how high is Mount Everest? How high is the mountain? Okay, 8,848 meters. Okay, cool. That's it. And then you'll nog get a guy who says, no, but the latest measurements have revealed, and as sea levels are changing, and where are you measuring it from, and blah blah. It gets all like, what is the truth? And all I want to say is that in a world of so much information, which is impossible for one person to digest, one person can't even digest a small fraction of it.
It's not engineered for that.
What are you going to use? Knowledge? Is knowledge going to protect you? All your science, all your know-how, till some other guy who knows more how? It's like Mike Tyson says, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yes.
Your guiding light is value, is principle, is your good moral being. And then you hear this guy say that, and you hear that guy say that, and then your eyes get all glassy, and it's just like, and you go, there lies the truth, because it lies with my feeling, and I know my feeling is in accordance with my good values, not hurting anybody, and whatever those things are, that is what's going to protect you. And that's just to add on to the whole moral thing about gold. Now the last one that is weird. I know I speak too much. I'm going to try to keep it short.
The one we've been waiting for. Bated breath.
The thing that I see missing in every argument with regards to gold, and I can understand why it is, because you're in a financial environment, and again you have the scientist dictating that you should speak according to the scientific paradigm. But throughout the ages, the rich and powerful have adorned their environment with gold. And a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that you're rich, therefore you have gold.
Yeah.
But I put it to you that it also works the other way. Yes, if you're rich, you get gold, but it also works the other way. You have gold, you're rich. I'll take you to every King Solomon's Mines movie that was ever made. You know, that moment where the guy opens the chest and the shiny gold reflects in his face, and it's just glee.
Goudkoers.
Goudkoers, it's that fever. It gets you. And that is more metaphysical.
Yes.
And it's undeniable. And I suggest take a polygraph.
The proverb of Chris Chameleon and gold now.
Yeah. Take a
Yeah.
polygraph test.
Yes.
Hook someone up, but you're not
Yes.
going to use it as a lie detector. Because a lie detector isn't really a lie detector.
Yeah.
It only detects the body's responses to certain things, and if that is a lie,
It's not a magic 8-ball.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They're going to react to it. So, and it's very useful, and it's becoming ever more relevant. Relevant. It's like an elephantian relevance. It's really
Yes.
huge. It's a relevance, new word. Relevant. And it's when you're speaking English as
Yeah.
you're translating from Afrikaans.
Yeah.
And
As
your
it goes.
so your relevance of the polygraph test is growing because it's really been shown to really have a value. And I put it to you that if you hook someone up with a polygraph test and you put gold anywhere near them, it's going to have an effect. It's going to have an effect on it. And what I would really like to do is put gold into someone's hand who doesn't know what gold is,
Yes.
and see what that does. And I wouldn't be surprised to go away. But actually, I think the arrival of crypto, I would consider the notion, how's that? I would consider the notion that the arrival of crypto is incentivizing governments to re-evaluate the value of gold and reinforce the value
That's
of gold,
interesting.
because there's this new threat. It's a threat to gold
Yeah.
by some arguments,
Yes.
and it's a threat to fiat
Fiat.
currency. So the governments are, that's all we have is fiat and gold. And
Yeah.
here's this unstoppable wave of crypto. So we got to like hedge now. We got to like build the sand sacks and get the
Yes.
trenches dug,
Yes.
because this is where our value lies, and we can't control the crypto. So I think if you, as a little guy, has a bit of gold, just remember that the most powerful governments in the in the universe, in the country, and the world, and
As far as we know, in
institutions, exactly, and institutions hold
Yeah.
gold and have a vested interest to not let that just turn to nothing like a piece of lead.
Yes. It's interesting that vested interest point. It's almost as if your protection mechanism against the state is protected by the state for their own self-interests.
Yeah, Bitcoin is forcing that.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, we. Well, you are a family man now. You have a daughter. Has that changed the way you evaluate and plan for the future with your finances and what you purchase or what you invest in?
It has, yeah, it has, because I've never and I know I'm an oddball at that, but I've never had any medical insurance in my life.
Okay.
And I've never had any insurance. Why? Because for me it's important to act in accordance with my principles, and for me it's not principled to do that. And because I'm with that small majority of human beings who actually also have a spiritual life going along my my physical life, it's far out, man. It's like, I don't know if it even belongs, but you can cut it out of this podcast if you want. But say you're a religious person, say you have a concept of God, you're one of those. And if you're not, if you're an atheist, I would invite you for a conversation, because I love conversations with atheists. They're
okay.
actually more exciting to me than conversations with religious folk.
Or commies.
Yeah, even, yeah, just because it's easier. But now, God, say your concept of God, knew 2 billion years ago that you and I were going to sit here and have this conversation as an omnipotent, omniscient being. So there is nothing I could have done by hook or by crook or any other action to avoid you and me being here right now.
Yeah, okay.
This is also a scientific...
Predestination almost.
Yes, predestination, the omnipotence and the predetermination of God.
Yes.
But this is also a scientific fact. Because everything happens for a reason. In Boo, there was the song Mud.
Okay.
And there's one line that goes, computer, dun, 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 computer route to the future, dun, 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 dun. Feed it past all to computer, see the future that's not new to your computer, dun, 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 dun. So what it is that if you could have a computer that could feed all the data of the past, if you could feed all the data on every ant fart, every rustling, every wind turbulence little thing, it's an inconceivable amount of data. But if you could know all that data, the future would not become a matter of prediction. It would become a matter of calculation, because everything happens for a reason, and that happened for a reason. So the idea for the atheist scientist, the idea of free will is nonsense. It doesn't exist. There is no such thing. It's just an illusion. There is no free will, because even your idea of free will has been predetermined by. So you're like, you think that it's like, choose the pastel green or the pink. Which one would you like? It's like, no, I want the pastel green, and that's my choice. But it's not really your choice, because when you were a baby, your mother left a pink blanket on your face and you nearly smothered, and since then you are a pink phobia, a pinkophobe. It's not free choice, everything has a reason for it. So according to the unfolding of the universe and the universal sum 2 billion years ago, it was already incontrovertible and unavoidable that you and I would be sitting in exactly these positions right now, having exactly this conversation. This is where God and the atheists meet. Welcome to the table. And because of that, but because I've chosen for myself, and I haven't chosen because I cannot choose for myself, but I find myself in lieu of the spiritual path. And it's like, dear God, protect me throughout this day. Thank you for your grace. And if you don't worry, because I got a policy. I'm covered. What the hell is up with that? And so I haven't done it, and I've faced many dangers.
The man-made
gods.
Gods, effectively, yeah.
And I've had
or angels.
Horrible brushes with death. I've come incredibly close to death. I've stared the devil in the eye quite a few times, but I've managed to survive throughout.
So scrape through.
Okay, and this is a very long answer to your question. Has it changed the way with my daughter and my wife? Yes, it has, because now for the first time in my life, I think of someone other than me. My intention is always to be look after myself and not hurt anybody else.
Yes.
Unless me saying that I'm a man offends you, then I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry for that, but I'm not going to say I'm not a man for that reason. But now that I have a wife and a daughter, it has changed me in the sense that I am now more vulnerable, because I've had guns pointed at me, and I've had a knife in my body, and not the surgeon's knife.
Yeah.
And
there wasn't a scalpel either.
Yeah, and I fought. But now the game is different, because now it's my wife and my child.
Yes.
Now what I do, I have to protect myself, but I have to protect them as well. And how do I do this? I can't just gung-ho and go like, yeah, fuck it, we're going to fight, I have to think about it differently. But whereas it's made me more vulnerable, it's made me stronger, because I will fight harder for them than I will for myself. Okay. You cannot understand that until you have a child.
Okay.
That fight in the bar, where the oak moored you, where at some point you're like, okay, I've had enough, I can't go anymore. Oak can moor you into that position.
Yeah.
But when your daughter is there, it's like
you never give up.
You just don't give up. So it makes you get greater vulnerability, but you also get greater power. You get greater strength.
And that sort of, I guess, filters through into all aspects of your life as well. That it's finances, personal, it's home security.
Yeah, it does. It makes you more aware, because now the weirdest thing happens. You're sitting. We don't have TV. We stopped watching TV 6 years ago. But like once a month, it's like we make popcorn, everything, then we watch a DVD. What's it going to be? Like Pete's Dragon or what? No, I'm kidding. But, you're watching DVD, and you'll just be like that, and then your daughter, who's like 14 months old, climbs up on the couch and he's about to fall over, and you're just watching. You just go. And
Sheesh.
what was that?
Yeah.
It's like I have her by the
Spider-Man
leg.
on
I just protected her brain because it's it's a concrete floor there. It's like okay, whoop.
Amazing.
There's that thing that comes into it, which is really wonderful. And for the first time, I think constructively of what happens when I die.
Okay.
After I die. And I'm not going to open up an insurance policy because that's not the way I do. But it becomes a thing of everything that I have to look after it and fill it with value in a way that will leave a legacy.
Yes.
Leave a legacy. I think that's it. Now suddenly I need to leave a legacy.
That's
Whereas it used to be, when I die, it's all over. Now there's like, you think differently, you act differently.
Chris, you're a family man now, and you and your wife, Danila, have even launched or released a album that was nominated as the best contemporary Afrikaans album at the SAMAs, and it was called Postaf.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like you make a powerful musical team now, right? Can we expect any new music soon? What do you guys have in mind?
We've been recording an album for 2 years now, so we love making music together. She brings something new and wonderful and fresh to my music. I've never worked with someone the way I work with her. Obviously, I bring a bit of experience and expertise, so it's a wonderful mix.
Every experience.
Yeah, but we're yes, we are in the process of recording. The studio is just there, off camera, and when will it be ready? I don't know. We thought it would be ready last year, but this is what happens if you don't have a deadline. And we're not making it for any markets. I don't know if anyone's going to be interested in it because you have these 7-minute, 8-minute epics of. But that's what's so nice is freedom. We now that we've exited the system and the industry, we have the freedom to really just make these things. And of course, we'll make it available.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, and thank you
It's been
so
a
much for your
pleasure.
time.
Thanks very much, Chris.